the base salary structure according to 742-508. Did I clarify that so that it was clear as mud?
Yes.
Everybody? Everybody, it's clear as mud? Okay, good. Glad to know. So I just wanted to clarify that, you know, you can look at that, and we certainly, I do support, I think, you know, the one thing I would take issue with, and this is more in the nature of this afternoon's discussion, but in Ms. Merson's letter, she asserted that it's clear to her, and I suppose to us, she's indicating the sheriff, that the Broadwater County Finance Office either cannot or will not calculate the deputy's wages or benefits correctly. I don't believe there's any cannot or will not that applies. I don't think there's been any willful intention to miscalculate, although an audit going back 10 years would certainly clarify. I mean, it concerns me to find out, and I think it would concern any member of the public to find out that an elected official is receiving several $1,000s a year that has no justification whatsoever in the salary structure. So I think an audit going backward would clarify that concern for everybody. And certainly we have had practices that are not always perfect, but that's true in every municipality. I guess I just want to say that from what I have the access to in terms of records and what I've seen in the 2.5 years I've been here, I don't believe that there's been established a willful intention to improperly calculate benefits or salary. And I don't believe that there's any evidence that our accounting department, at least at present, is incapable of, which would be cannot, of calculating them properly or correctly. But I do think that while we have this opportunity to address all these issues, the more simple and clear cut we keep these issues, that will help our accounting department in dealing with what is otherwise probably one of the most, I assume, complicated salary calculations that's out there because of all these statutory provisions that apply. And so that's by way of kind of explaining why I'm saying, you know, since the percentages don't need to apply on the corner thing, maybe we can make it a little easier by making those numbers just a little more rounded and flat, so that there aren't as many little minor amounts that have to be calculated or juggled. I certainly understand why the sheriff's position would be to continue to keep the coroner increment much higher than what Mike suggested, and that's gonna get down to a budgetary discussion between all y'all with regard to where's the money, because there is gonna be a need to find funds to fix this solution. I'm sure that the funds are not there in the department's budget, so the commission is going to have to be willing to find the funds and increase the funding to that budget in order, or one of your alternatives is to look at other areas in the budget and ask the department head to address those areas. I mean, that's gonna be a budgetary process, and I guess the only other thing I wanna mention with regard to that paragraph, and again, we can talk about it some more this afternoon, but problems with not only the incorrect wages, but errors with coroner pay and retirement contributions, that's addressed in the next sentence. And then it's clear to us that wages for the sheriff and deputies have been incorrectly calculated for years, and there may be issues of back pay owed to some of the deputies as a result. An audit would help us determine that. I don't know if the sheriff's also open to returning monies that she was paid without any justification in regard to correcting everybody's salaries, but those are all issues that are best addressed through, it's my opinion, through an independent auditor, because as we all know, there are a number of conflicting personalities involved here, and I'm just going to leave it at that as far as highlighting what I think everybody in the room knows to be, we're all not singing and hugging each other and saying kumbaya. So getting somebody in who has an independent, unbiased perspective, and I don't believe that because Ms. Merson recommended this person, that means he has any bias. I have faith in Ms. Merson's. Ms. Merson has a great deal of experience in municipal representation, and I'm sure that she was proposing somebody that she believed to be somebody who was an expert in this area with regard to applying the statutes to the numbers, and that he'll do so as contracted by the parties jointly, without any regard for wanting a certain outcome for a certain party. Does that make sense to everybody? Did I represent that appropriately, Jane?
Yes.
Do we have a sheet that shows longevity too?
It's on, just on the,
But I mean, on the one from Jane. Or,
No.
I think she's probably, by not highlighting that, I guess I would just offer that she's probably confirming that there's no dispute with the sheriff's office with regard to the longevity that Mike has set forth in terms of number of years.
No,
We weren't
we just-
provided the information with longevity, so I didn't include, and I know some of the years on there are not correct, so.
Oh,
didn't you have this sheet?
Yeah, we all got
Yeah,
that.
the
sheet,
sheet.
yeah.
The sheet
But
from
those
Mike, we
numbers-
believe the numbers for longevity were incorrect, but I don't think we're gonna be able to figure out exactly what longevity is until we figure out what the wages are. Because longevity is based on percentage of the wages times the number of years, and I think he's wrong on a number of the years.
he admitted that on
Mhm.
that, at our meeting, that there may have been some errors in longevity. It's not related to the base though,
Yeah,
which
and
is
that's
really
why
the
I just-
subject.
Included the bases.
Makes
So one of
sense.
the issues we would want our auditor to look at then is, I mean, obviously you can figure out the number of years pretty clearly, but one of the issues is to go back and look at what years there were pay freezes, is that correct? Because the longevity doesn't apply in a pay freeze year. What are the other issues that would affect longevity?
Rating
Right.
service.
Okay,
Mm.
so the amount of your longevity for a certain year would depend on what rank you were at that, in that year. So that's a whole area we would definitely wanna be sure that we ask the auditor to clarify for us.
And because this was brought up, I just want it brought out that Debbie has the worksheets completed on longevity, she addressed that. So, you know, we certainly, anybody can get that information with just a request, I did.
So what, I guess what you're saying then, what I'm hearing you say, Chairperson, I'm sorry, I'm from New England, we say it that way, is that we have calculated that to what we believe to be the appropriate level longevity?
Because it's kind of a sideline, one of those things that of course will be addressed, nobody's losing it right now. In a worksheet brought together to discuss the base, the coroner's increment, and the general raise for all employees. The fact that there were some errors in longevity is really just frosting on this cake. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual cake. So Debbie went through and put everything together, counted from the anniversary dates, the longevity, and has worksheets done addressing each of those. But it's really not what we're discussing here today, so I didn't ask her to make copies for everybody. But certainly the sheriff can just give her a call and ask for that.
Well, and I guess just to clarify, and I apologize, I mean, I really have been involved with you all on the legal aspects for some of the numbers issues. Some things get done without me being CC'd. I don't know when did Debbie do this longevity calculation, and did it include a component to Brenda's base that Mike has now concluded we can't really justify, or?
No, it was just on where we're at today, and it was just correcting the dates. I have it all right here for you. It was a discussion just in, it was started by Wynn, actually, who came down and questioned whether or not the base included longevity. So I went to Debbie, I said, does the base include longevity? She said no. And she said, I think there's some errors in the longevity, and here's the worksheets that I put together, and there they are. Anniversary dates there, longevity calculation, it's a NACO worksheet, and she just put it together. So we can correct that column longevity that's incorrect, but I don't think it really needs to be a tangent we take off on for any amount of time or energy, because it's not really what we're talking about here today. It certainly needs to be correct. I think everybody agrees with that, but I don't think it's something we need to debate beyond the statements. It's an error in Mike's worksheet that we have the ability to correct.
Would that auditor be available right away?
Yes. I spoke with him, if I may, Madam Chair. I spoke with him Friday afternoon after I had sent this letter out to Ms. Bosky, and his firm would be available. I'm reluctant to call him an auditor because I think the term audit encompasses more than what we're gonna ask him to do. My proposal was simply to ask him to look at all of the payroll information and do a correct calculation in accordance with the statutes. And then as far as coroner pay and longevity, that all falls into place after. Or you could ask him to do that as well, but, I know that he did the calculation for the Gallatin County deputies case, he did the Lewis and Clark County deputies case, and I believe a highway patrol case maybe 10 years ago, so, I'm comfortable that he can put this together relatively quickly.
Sounds like
Get
he's
his
got
numbers
experience.
back.
Would that happen to be the highway patrol case in which our now district judge was the lead attorney? That would certainly be helpful to know that it's somebody that our judge has familiarity with, but I think it was then attorney James Reynolds, who's now our district judge. But, I mean, I agree that if we're just looking at the calculation from now to go forward, that's one piece, but again, and we can discuss it more this afternoon, but the concern that's raised in the bottom paragraph of your letter, Jane, I think that is requesting that an audit process take place going backwards. So, I think what I'm suggesting is that we accept that proposal, but expand it to, look backwards, so that we can determine possibly, you know, the origin of some of the incorrect, salary calculation procedures that we've been engaging in apparently. And, you know, the bottom line on that is, and we've had other issues where we've been in that place, and I'm gonna talk with you later today about, you know, related to the trust, the same kind of thing. You know, the purpose of audits is to detect, mistakes, whether they're bad will or goodwill, or, you know, it isn't necessarily that anybody has done something intentionally, but we are all human in our working, and we make mistakes, and accounting mistakes at a municipal level are quite common. I think Jane could probably attest to that from her years of experience. I guess before we get too far down a road of there's been corruption or bad deeds in Broadwater County, I would just point out that if anybody pays attention to local political concerns, this is one that comes up all over the country all the time. The purpose of having, since we know we have some problems, it would certainly, I think, behoove the county, while you have an auditor, a person with auditing experience involved, and you've had these assertions made, we should go ahead and go back at some period of time. It would be up to you folks to decide how long you want to go back. I would suggest at least 10 years, because it seems to be, that's the period of time that Mike indicated that he could at least find one error that there was no explanation for in how the sheriff department salaries were being calculated. And we could possibly face at the end of that a suggestion that we do have to pay back wages or ask other employees to return wages that were incorrectly paid. But that's one of the issues that comes out of doing an audit, so you know, you have to consider both of those in making a decision about that.
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Sure.
I just don't know if, the gentleman that I talked to Friday is willing to do a full audit of Broadwater County's payroll, or however you wanna do it, for the last 10 years. My only conversation would he be willing to or able to do a correct calculation for the deputies' wages as they currently are, and to fix them going forward. So I guess we'd have to get back to him. I can't sit here and represent to you that firm's willing to do a 10-year audit.
Okay.
Also, under the wage and hour laws, if a deputy did have a back wage claim, they would only be able to get up to 3 years of back wages, not 10. So if anything, I would think that this issue is maybe potentially 3 years back.
And it might be
But that's up to
wise
you, I'm not.
to
yeah, it's
do a
up to you
phase
guys.
1 and phase 2 phase one is please take care of this part as fast and quickly as you can for the benefit of our employees, deputies and others. And phase two is please get us some answers, because they seem to have an awful lot of bearing on, so much of what's going on in this county right now. So, you know, we certainly can look at that this afternoon and work more diligently with our county attorney on that to determine what is the most wise way to move forward. So, you mentioned before, Carla, moving on and tabling this until this afternoon for a decision. We've got a couple of pieces that I think Erin needs to be involved with, and one is, you need to go back to the union and reopen the contract, address a couple of things, one being the longevity discussion we had last week. That's part of this, because the difference is the timing. That deputy stands to make a lot more money with this plan as they do the 1.5.
Yeah.
And the instructions from Mike were, don't do anything until we get this worked out.
Okay.
So that's why nothing was done, with that. So that's up to you guys in the union. But with that, is there a reason why we can't be working all this parallel? Erin goes to the union and says, okay, here's the counter proposal, and we work on this part. Is there more you need from us? If we're gonna table that this afternoon, and part of this was voting on it contingent on agreeing that the union is going to move through their part and that the sheriff is going to do the rank structure part. I guess what I'm asking of you, Carla, too, is does Erin need to stay until this afternoon? And we have great shops, Christmas season, great restaurants, so, you know, there's plenty for you to do.
Yeah.
I think that's Erin's decision to make. I mean, I think there are relevant discussions happening about the sheriff's office with regard to the lawsuit, but I don't know that it, I mean, I guess I'm not gonna tell her whether she should stay or not. It's up to her to decide.
No, and I guess I wanted just a discussion. What is it you need from us? How does this tabling affect you?
Looks like I'll be sticking around,
Okay,
so. I do need to, talk with my, Teamsters about the 7 years compared to the 5 years that he suggested, and then also the other longevity issue one.
okay,
So I would have to get a hold of them.
okay. All right, so, is there more we need to do this morning then before waiting until this afternoon to continue this? Are we good to table then?
I don't know if anyone has questions. Did you wanna see if anyone in the gallery has any questions?
I can do that, I just wanted to be sure I'm just getting silence from everyone, so I'm gonna take that as an affirmative. All right, anybody else, any questions from the public? Clarifying questions, concerns, input, totally open. Brian?
So what do I get to go tell my employees about their 56-cent an hour cost of living increase?
We're under the same legal advice we have been, that until this issue is resolved, and for lawyers, that generally means all the parties have signed something that they're bound to, if nothing else. We can't implement a raise for anybody. It is not going to happen before Christmas, I'm sorry to say. I don't.
So do I have to go get my attorney to come in and get you guys to agree to something? Do we all have to bring our own attorney in to get something done, or what?
I would hope that this county is done with suing each other, with anyone hiring attorneys to sue the county for any reasons. Everything we do, we should be able to work out in an agreeable and constructive way. I will tell you this, Brian, it was something, and Erin was there, we had a couple of meetings where we were trying to get this done before Christmas. It didn't happen. This having somebody else come in and do, even in a phased process, the calculations and then the audit, The audit probably doesn't need to hold up the raise, the calculations probably will, so we're looking at another delay. But I want you to know two things. One is, Mike in his proposal, the third piece was implement the 56 cents. The reason is the top paid deputies are not getting as much as the bottom paid deputies, and it's a way to help them accept this in a more positive light. Nobody's losing money, they're just not getting as much. The other thing is addressing these big increases to some deputies and then telling the rest of the employees you're getting nothing is just not right. It will create a morale problem, more strife
Continuing
between,
morale
exactly, more strife between the two departments, which is doing nobody any good. And then the other thing is the 56 cents is in the budget. Every department, almost every department can afford that. We just have to get this done first.
To
There's
quote
nothing
Jerry
we can do.
Maguire, show me the money.
Well, you know
Yeah.
what, Brian?
I grew up in an era where people's word meant something. And when I have my supervisors tell me, you'll get 56 cents an hour. And it's now 6 months into that process, and we don't have that 56 cents an hour. I gotta go tell my employees that, well, you're not getting it yet. You're gonna get it sometime, but I can't tell you when. It'll be retroactive to July. You know, it's asinine. Is it gonna come with interest? IRS at least pays you interest when they take your money against their will.
And Brian, I guess what I would ask of you at this point is you use your leadership skills to try and keep your employees focused on the fact that they do have a good job, they do have a raise, potentially, and very strongly, potentially do have a raise coming. Yes, our word is still worth something, and I hope you can communicate that to your employees, but we are being held up due to a situation that was in the making 10 years ago. But it's our duty and responsibility to fix it now. It's not getting done as quick as we would like, it's not getting done as quick as you would like, but it is getting done. It is getting done right, and it's gonna take some more time, and please use your leadership skills to try and keep this team together and not add to the strife. So, and I know you can do that because I've seen you in
So
action.
we'll continue to put an IOU on their pay stub.
Yeah, till this is worked out, yeah, it's an incredibly complex issue, and yeah. Any other questions, concerns, input, anything? Any other hands? All right,
I guess the only thing I wanna offer with regard to Brian's concern as a possible interim solution, if you look at page 5 on Mr. Saystad's proposed solution, although this goes against Mike's advice as to which option he chooses, the option 2 is to not give the elected officials the 56-cent wage, but give it, or wage increase, but give it to all the other employees except the deputy sheriffs. As a temporary, I mean, they would get it once the whole solution is implemented, and it would still be retroactive to July 1st. But for that solution to occur, to go forward as of the next pay period with implementing the 56 cents per hour for all other employees other than electeds and the sheriff's department employees, we would have to have the willingness of the union to waive the Me Too, which is apparently gonna go away as part of the solution overall. That is a possibility. That's a suggestion that you can consider and discuss amongst yourselves, the willingness there. I mean, I think we're under a deadline for January 16 for a visit with the district judge, contrary to what's been reported in the newspaper. And I don't know if someone from the someone from the newspaper is here today, so hopefully this can be clarified. The sheriff has filed a petition for a writ of mandate November 6th, or filed an intent to appeal November 6th, and then on December 5, she filed a petition for writ of mandate. A writ of mandate is where you set forth certain things that you are alleging have occurred, and you set forth the probable cause to establish those allegations. But the evidence of those allegations and any contrary evidence that the county would have to present have not yet been heard by the court. Thus, the court has not issued a ruling in favor of the Broadwater County Sheriff's Office, as was reported in last week's paper. It has simply signed the writ of mandate proposed order, which says, yes, on its face, you have said this, this, and this has not been followed in the law. So follow it, or show up January 16 and show why that's not true. So I just want to be really clear about that, because a lot of people have been asking about the article in the paper. I think that I would have wished they would have called for some clarification on the legal process, and I think our office is always available to you folks to do that. There has been no finding of the district court at this time, and there has been no in favor of ruling. There's just been a proposed order signed with the, or you can show up at court and have your evidence be heard. And the county does have sufficient evidence to counter a number of the allegations that were asserted, so I guess I want to be clear that that little misnomer is kind of resolved. We do still have that deadline that we're up against with regard to one aspect of this whole big mess. Ms. Merson has indicated that with certain things possibly being accepted by the board, and we'll discuss that later this afternoon, then we might be able to jointly continue that deadline in order to have solutions implemented on an appropriate time schedule according to getting an auditor to do at least the first or quicker piece, etc. But one of the things that Erin could bring back to her union members when she talks to them, and that the board could consider, is that in the interim, you could apply the 56-cent raise to non-elected employees and not sheriff's deputies, but other members of the Broadwater County Sheriff's Office, I believe, could also receive their 56 cents in a hasty fashion, should you all agree that we won't file any grievances on the Me Too clause, which is gonna go away presumably through the larger solution, and that we'll all be happy to see our coworkers get their money while we wait a little longer for ours. So that is a middle way that we could consider on the raise. And I'm not promising it, but I'm just saying that, you know, I know that folks were expecting to see that check. We had, and we very much wanted to be able to have that check go out prior to Christmas, so everyone could spend it on Christmas presents, but on the upside, hopefully we'll get it to you in time for your first credit card payments following Christmas. Or in any case, for a spring do-it-yourself home improvement project, something of that nature.
Can you guys give us a timeline as to if we did waive that, when would the county see their paychecks? When would they see their retro?
I would think that, when is our next payroll?
Pay period ends the 23rd.
Is it too soon to calculate it for for that pay period? For everybody else, it's a lot of employees, I know, so maybe the middle of January pay period?
If Black Mountain can assist, no.
It's not
I
too
have
soon.
to do manually.
Yes. So by the end of this month or by middle of January, if everybody agrees, then, and I think that would apply to what, 75% of the people who work for the county, if not more?
And one thing with that, again, with Black Mountain, you can certainly put a very strong request that they assist in this, but it is the easier payroll to configure. Deputies are by far the hardest, so we could get Debbie some help with Black Mountain if we could.
I mean, I would certainly recommend that middle way if people, I mean, I'm not the one who has control of, and I don't mean to put pressure on, but to some degree it's putting a little bit of pressure on the union, but I think what I would like to see is that we all be supportive of this solution process and doing the process according to law. We've obviously got at least a decade's worth, if not longer, of violating the statutes, and so I hope that that is sort of self-explanatory to everybody watching the process from a little bit outside, that we're trying really hard to do this uber correctly so that we don't have another problem, you know, down the road. But I can certainly understand the frustration that many, I mean, I have employees myself who have this frustration, so you're not the only supervisor in that position. I understand it, Brian, and it would be nice if we could kind of lift their spirits a little, and maybe that will keep everybody on board with, you know, we're all as a team here trying to do the right thing to correct the overall and overarching problem.
I have probably a stupid question, but I don't know how you could go back 3 years. Don't you have to go clear back to the beginning
Well,
for the
what,
base?
what Jane is referring to is federal and state statutes that govern, there's only a certain time period in which you can go back and ask somebody to give back money, or that you can go to a community and say, you miscalculated the wages, so now you have to pay back wages. If that was open, unended, I mean, that, it would be impossible for there's a reason that statutes of limitations are in place in order to allow governance to function. But, you know, my suggestion, and I don't wanna get into it too much in depth, I do suggest a 10-year audit. And there are reasons related to another litigation matter, which is private, that I would suggest that, and Chairman Olbert, chairperson, oh my goodness. If you were to put me on the agenda next week for a brief closed session meeting with you, I could discuss more in detail why I believe 10 years is appropriate related to that other matter. With regard to Ms. Merson's assertion that the finance office cannot or will not calculate deputy wages or benefits correctly, my experience of what's happening currently, I don't believe that's supported, but I don't know if it's true that the finance office over the past 10 years could not or would not correctly calculate them, and I think that we should take a look at that, but I'm not gonna get into more detail with regard to that at this time. But what she's telling you as far as 3 years is, that's as far back as, and I'm not even sure, I would have to look at the wage, and Jane may already have the answer to this, but I'm not sure if we could go back and request overpayments be paid back over 3 years, but that's as far as we would be required to pay underpayments to employees from good faith miscalculations. I don't know what happens if we discover a willful pattern of misapplication of the figures. That's an issue I'd have to research and get back to you on.
One thing I would like for our 145 appointment, if you could, Brenda, is Mike made a suggestion that the coroner increment be 2,000 for you and 1,800 for any deputies. Your proposal is almost double that, 3,804 for you and 3,424 for the deputies. In order to make that jump, we need a justification to explain to the public why we went from Mike's 2,000 to your almost 4,000. So if you could just bring a justification, how many hours, whatever, I'm sure there's a justification that you can provide for
Mike
where the
didn't
numbers
know
came from.
who the deputy coroners were, and he said from his calculation, nobody would lose money. So by him putting the deputy coroners down at $1,800, they would lose money. The only way so they don't lose money is keeping them at the wages that they were at. If you put Andy Martin at $1,800, he's gonna lose. Take $1,800 from 3424, he's gonna lose that amount. So subtract $1,800 from 3424, he's gonna lose that amount.
I guess just to clarify there, what he asserted, Brenda, in his solution was that the increase in base pay would make up for it. So you're saying that when you looked at, because he didn't include Martin on his
Yeah.
thing, so you're saying that Martin's increase in base pay won't make up for it?
It won't.
Okay.
It won't.
Can you
Because he's
just-
part-time.
Can you just provide that in writing so that we have a justification from you for anyone who says, why did you jump from the original 2,000 to almost 4? Then we have justification in writing. And that was something Mike had said at the end of our meeting. Everything you guys do, put it in writing so everybody has the exact same information and there's less room for misunderstandings. So it's just a paragraph that I'm asking for.
It's right here. But Deputy Coroner Martin is not listed on the sheet as a part-time employee.
And it's my understanding that this 3424 is what they're currently being paid?
Yes.
And it
Okay,
was
put that in a paragraph, put it into
Seistead's
something so it's
suggestion was that it'd
justified.
be less than that.
Yep, that'd be fine, I just need a justification for the change. And
There
I'm
is no
not
change.
asking for, yeah,
That's the way it is now.
I think,
and that's fine,
Seisted's
we don't,
requesting the change, we're saying it stays like it is.
Chair
Maybe,
Ober,
yeah.
I think probably, I understand, and I have been one who's pushing document, but we do have the eye of the Sony cam on us, on this meeting, and so everyone has, I think, documented, and I guess if anyone has a question with regard to coroner duties, the job description for coroner is in county paperwork and available to anyone in the public who wants to ask. I mean, I can certainly attest that when I get their reports on a regular basis in my office, I always think, I'm glad it wasn't me who had to go out there. So, you know, what we're working at is competing proposals here. So we're not changing from status quo. You're proposing status quo.
Well, other than my corner pay is lower.
Then it would, so you're proposing a reduction for yourself,
Correct.
but to keep your deputies at a status quo. I think I had actually suggested that maybe we could round out the numbers to make them a little easier, so maybe, maybe that could benefit the deputies a little bit more, at your expense, or we could bump yours up a little bit so that it's also a round number. Maybe make them 34.25, 38.25, something to make them easier for accounting. But I guess, I think it's pretty much documented in our discussion here that the justification that this sheriff's office is proposing for not accepting Mike's proposal is based on a desire not to see a negative impact on at least one reliable part-time deputy.
Actually, it's two of the deputy coroners. If we went down to the $1,800, Captain Corthals would have lost about $1,000.
Okay. And his might be improved somewhat in his base, but still, it is, I think we can all understand that any employee who sees some increment of their salary or fringe go in a negative fashion is not gonna be happy about that, and that's one of the reasons why we talked from the very beginning about the fact that the solution of reducing wages to fix this was not gonna be amenable for any of us. And so I think, you know, I don't know that it's necessary entirely to put that out in writing any more than it already has been. We're not changing our status quo from what we're doing right now on this issue. We're just not or the sheriff's office is just not accepting Mike's proposal on that issue, and I do think that my recollection as well is that he discussed in meeting with us last week that he didn't really have all the ins and outs on who that would affect. So I think that's a reasonable compromise. And I understand that Chairperson Obert's concern is that we don't have a citizen who wonders why we didn't take the cheaper option that had been proposed by Mike on coroner, and that's a very legitimate concern. Hopefully if anyone confronts you with that concern at the grocery store or at a Rotary meeting, you can ask them to please dial up this meeting so they can understand that was a well thought out and considered issue, and that we're not just going for a higher number for some willy-nilly reason.
I appreciate what you said, in bringing both sides on the table on this, Carla. And I appreciate the fact that we're not gonna get the written documentation, but Mike put together 6 pages explaining what he put together in his justification. I do not think that it is too much to ask for just a couple of sentences that justify what you've proposed. I think you should go with this. I think it needs to be evidence with this that says, these are the reasons why. I think it's important to this process that we're going through. And not everybody watches YouTube. Not everybody has the technical ability to figure it out. Not everyone has the fast enough internet. So when we have all this paper justifying all of the stuff we're doing, I think it's important for your counter proposal to have just a sentence or two written down that states why. So, again, thank you, Carla, for putting things very eloquently, but I do still rest on my request for justification. All right, anything else before we break for lunch, since this is tabled? Anything from the public? No. Anything more from the table? Okay. Thank you, everyone, and we'll meet again at 1:30 for lunch.
Even if you get a drink.
Yeah, right.